settle, please, so we can start the meeting. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of North and East Plan Panel. My name is Councillor Javed Akhtar, and I will be chairing today's meeting. Could I remind everyone that today's meeting is being live streamed on the Leeds City Council YouTube channel so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. North and East Plan Panel deals with applications from the north, east, and the east of the city. The aim of the panel is to hear all the relevant information from applicant, members of public, council officers to help members of the panel to make their decision. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone once you have introduced yourselves. So if I start from Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Crates, Planning Officer in Planning Services.
Lisa Brannan, Principal Engineer Highways.
Good afternoon, Emma Flint, Councillor in Wheatwood Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Morel Michaliki, Paxton Methley Ward.
Councillor Paul Ray, Hunsel and Riverside Ward.
Councillor Sharon Burke, substituting for Councillor Illingworth.
Hi there, Councillor Hannah Bithell, representing Kirkstall Ward.
Hi, Councillor Jim McKenna, Armley Ward, substituting for, I'm not quite sure who, but I'm here anyway for somebody.
Good afternoon, Lewis Foote, Senior Technical Officer, and I'll be in charge of the PowerPoint today.
Good afternoon, Stephen Varley, Design Officer.
Good afternoon, Phil Ward, Team Leader, Landscape Heritage and Ecology.
Ryan Stevenson, Councillor for Harewood Ward.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Alan Lamb. I represent the Wetherby Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Barry Anderson, Adeline Wharfdale Ward.
Debbie Oldham, Clerk to the panel.
Philippa Plumtree Varley, Principal Legal Officer and Lead Legal Advisor to the panel this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Carr, Head of Development Management.
Hello, David Newbury, Lead Planning Officer for the Plans panel.
Thank you for that. Moving to the agenda, could I ask the clerk to go through agenda item number 1 to 5, please?
We're really sorry, Chair. We've got a problem with some of the cards. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal inspection of documents. Under agenda item 2, there are no items which require the exclusion of the press or the public. Under agenda item 3, there are no late items of business. Under agenda item 4, could I ask members to declare any interest they may have? I'll take silence as there are none. Under agenda item 5, apologies have been received from Councillor Jenkins and Councillor Sharp. Councillor Burke is in attendance as substitute for Councillor Jenkins, and Councillor McKenna is attending as substitute for Councillor Sharp. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Can I also thank Councillor McKenna and Councillor Burke for subbing this afternoon. Moving on to item 6, minutes of previous meeting held on 28th July 2022. Do members accept these minutes are true and correct record? If I just mention, we did receive an email from one of the objectors who came to our meeting last time, Mr. Andy Berkeley. He asked for a minor amendment, but I've taken it on board, if that's okay with members. It was only minor, but we don't know exactly what he meant, so I take it as read. Yeah. Item number 7, that will be presented by Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is a planning application by the City Council for construction of a new community sports hub, including 4 floodlit artificial grass pitches enclosed by metal ball stop fencing, car parking and associated landscaping works, and also a proposal to connect the development to the wider Green Park, including a lit footpath link from the Red Row housing development to Osthorpe Primary School, an external substation and bin store on land off Thorpe Park Approach in Leeds. Okay. So if I start in terms of the development plan, unfortunately it's one of those sites which straddles 2 pages, but it's quite useful. I can, yeah, so Green Park is the area on the right hand side of the screen, and that's Osthorpe Lane to the west of it. You can clearly see it obviously sits within the wider main urban area with residential areas to the west and south. You can just about make out the Leeds to York railway line to the north and Cross Gates town centre. So we go to the next slide. And again, this is showing Green Park now appearing on the left-hand side of the slide, but its eastern extent with the Thorpe Park Business Park, employment allocation to the east in the pink area. So this morning on the site visit, we walked along the footpath that roughly follows that eastern boundary of Green Park in that area there. In terms of wider geography, obviously the M1 sits out to the east, and the East Leeds Orbital Road comes around the east of Leeds, around the outside of the employment allocation and into junction 46. And again, we saw a bit of that on the minibus this morning. We've included an extract from the site allocations plan. This just again shows Green Park in a wider context. So it's this area here to the south of the Radial Park site that we passed on the minibus. You can see the wider East Leeds extension to the east. Temple Newsham to the south, obviously quite a large area of green space there. This is really an aerial photograph from a bit of a distance. So again, Thorpe Park Business Park out to the east, Central Park in this central area to the north of the business park, and then the Red Row housing development to the north, abutting the Leeds to York railway line, and Green Park being this area of land roughly in here. The application site is formed by essentially what were 2 arable fields and part of a third one. And we saw the hedgerows that when we were out on site this morning, both to the existing footpath to the north and also separating these fields. Sorry. Yes, of course, no problem. Apologies. So to the eastern side of the site is the area known as the hockey stick, which is this sort of darker area with the footpath and bridleway that we passed this morning. So it's useful to refer to the previous Green Park master plan that was approved, and this has arisen in a number of the letters of representation. So this is an approved scheme which did at that time include sports pitches, football pitches within that scheme, but they were all grass pitches rather than the artificial pitches now proposed. They're also they were unlit as well, so they would have sat in the same location in that southern part of Green Park, but clearly unlit and natural grass. So in terms of existing constraints, I've included this plan, which shows the existing trees to the east. You can see, make out the tree line to the footpath that we walked down this morning. I've also shown the Yorkshire Water Sewer in blue, which runs east to west. And you'll note from the report that we're awaiting Yorkshire Water comments, which I'll come back to in time. Additionally on there, it might be a little bit faint in the southeastern corner is the Grimsditch Scheduled Ancient Monument. You couldn't really see that on site this morning because it's actually below the level of the existing ground, so it just appears as an open field, but there is in fact a Scheduled Ancient Monument in that location. It's thought the ditch runs much wider, running to the north and south, but there are various elements of it which are scheduled monument along the route. So in terms of the relationship between the development and existing trees and vegetation, the access is brought in from the east along Thorpe Park approach and into the site in this location. So clearly, as we saw this morning, there would need to be some clearance of vegetation through that hockey stick area of 12 trees. Additionally, you can see here there are some hedgerows which would otherwise sit within within the proposed pitches, and so those trees and hedgerows do need to be removed, but the wider hedgerows and trees are retained. So again, this is a master plan to show how the proposal would sit within the existing wider Green Park master plan. So again, the proposal sits in the southern part of the site. Existing trees and hedgerows retained to the north, east and south. Down here is Barrowby Woods. Outside of the site, further planting to be proposed as part of the Green Park master plan. I'll come back to this at the end, but there's also an area of off-site habitat creation that's proposed to the north of Osthorpe Hall, and that's in this area to the north. I should also point out that Osthorpe Hall is a Grade 2 star listed building that's mentioned in the report. So in terms of the proposal, vehicular access is brought in from the east via the Thorpe Park Business Park and into the site to turn right into the car park area, which would sit to the west of the existing and retained trees. Now, as we saw this morning, there is a diverted bridleway and a footpath running through those trees, and it's proposed that those are retained in situ, but that additional bridleway and footway are created to the west, and that would give an opportunity for users of those routes to walk or horse ride or cycle from north to south without needing to cross the access road. And those routes connect into the wider east to west right of way that we walked along this morning. And you can see on here there are wider routes around the pitches to the south, and they connect up with other rights of way through Barrowby Woods down to Barrowby Lane. There's additionally a lit path which would go from the path that we walked on this morning in a southwesterly direction and link up to Osthorpe Lane, and that provides access in the vicinity of Osthorpe Primary School. So the proposals themselves include 3 adult pitches and 1 junior pitch. They are AstroTurf pitches. Informed by the applicant, it's the most high-tech design in terms of those sorts of pitches at this point in time, but they would endeavour to look at what's on the market in terms of the best available pitches when they come to implementation. The pitches themselves are floodlit, so each pitch is to have each of the 3 adult pitches would have 8 15-metre high floodlighting columns, and the junior pitch would have 6 12-metre high floodlighting columns. And the floodlighting has been assessed by the council's lighting engineer, and what you can see from the plans is essentially that it's only really the pitches that are lit. It's the best in terms of technology available for minimising light spillage to the wider Green Park area, although it's acknowledged that you would see them clearly from outside the site when they're in use. In terms of the other areas shown on that plan, they represent various elements of meadow planting and hedgerow planting, and particularly the woodland planting to the west that would complement that existing hedgerow that's retained. Although clearly it would take some years for new tree planting to grow up in time. So that's just a further rendered drawing to give an indication of how the site would be greened up over time. It's also worth noting that as we saw on site this morning, the site falls from south to north. So the lowest part of the site would be a lower plateau, and then the 3 pitches on the southern side are a slightly higher plateau. But down here, particularly on the southern side, they're cut into the hillside. The lowest part of the site is to the north of the car park, and as you'd expect, that's where the proposed attenuation basin is located. So just in terms of some sections, so this is looking at an angle as to where the access road would cut through that embankment that we walked along this morning of the line of the former railway line. This is perhaps a bit clearer, showing the route in. So that might be a slightly better section. So you can see we walked on the top of this embankment this morning, looking down to the car parking area on our left. And it's proposed to then have a footpath and the bridleway beyond to the west. So the car park itself proposes 227 spaces, including 15 disabled spaces, 25 electric vehicle charging point spaces, 2 of those for disabled use, 16 motorcycle spaces, and 14 short stay cycle stands, which are actually in the hub area, which I'll come on to. The access to the site will be controlled by rising bollards to prevent unauthorised use after hours and the potential for antisocial behaviour. Come on to the substation and bin store details. So these would be constructed in a material in a walling material to match the hub building, so a buff brick, and they're looking at a sedum green roof to that particular structure. So then moving westwards, there's an access from the car park across towards the hub building. So it's intended that the hub would provide a variety of uses and be something of a focal point. So there's an outside seating area, very much a public space. There's a run up the hillside in that location with steps adjacent to the building because of the level of gradient, but there is an accessible route to the roof garden area. So to give a slightly clearer picture, that's looking across the front of the building, and then you can see how it then fits into the slope of the land, and with the green roof and roof garden above. So the glaze there is actually recessed a little way underneath the parapet, and it's proposed to construct the building and face it in a buff brick with some use of timber panelling. So in terms of the proposed layout of the building, as you'd expect, it includes changing facilities, also includes the reception area, accessible toilets, a changing places area as well. The cafe is very much at the end in terms of sandwiches and coffees and so on. It's not a bar, and it won't serve alcohol. There are also 2 meeting room spaces which can be opened up and used either as part of the cafe or separated off for separate use. And this slide shows the roof garden area. Again, the steps up the side, but there is the accessible route to the onto the roof as well. And it's part green roof planted with shrubs, And then part of it is an artificial surface, and that can be used for standing out and viewing over pitches. Now we've just got some sections through the building. Again, they seek to show how the buildings sat into the land and how the roof area would be used. Now we've got some visuals of that, which perhaps a bit clearer still. And then some interior CGIs. Okay, in terms of the pitches themselves, they are bound by boundary treatments. So there's various different types of boundary treatments, but the largest is the 4.5 metre high ball stop fencing. So that's the area in yellow, which essentially encompasses all of these pitches. So that's the highest structure that's proposed. Around the car parking area, it's just a knee rail, metal knee rail fence to keep people safe and so on, and to separate that from the wider park area. And then we have some further sections. Again, these show the plateaus being created within the site. This one shows particularly the relationship towards Thorpe Lane and properties there. But accepted, it will take some of those trees are existing, and in the background there is the retention of the existing hedge line and trees, but there will be additional planting. Although, as I say, that would take some time to grow up. And then a further section showing the cut and fill across the site in order to drop the upper pitches into a lower level to sit them below the overall horizon, and then coming down to that lower pitch to the east. So I mentioned before the biodiversity net gain calculation, which is set out in the report. And essentially there's there are 44.97 habitat biodiversity units as a baseline, and then 43.16 post-development. So there's a loss of 1.1. However, in terms of hedgerow biodiversity units, there are 13.83 as a baseline, and they're increased to 15.37 post-development, which is positive. However, there's a reduction, a loss of habitat units within the application site, and therefore this area of land to the north of Osthorpe Hall has been identified as an area where some habitat creation can take place. So that area currently has 4.4 units, and that will be raised to 7.36, creating a mixed scrub habitat. So overall, there would then be a 2.5% increase in habitat units and an 11% increase in hedgerow units, which would accord with the council's policies. So those are the main issues in terms of the proposals. Since the publication of the report, there have been 45 further letters of representation, plus a direct letter to officers. So I'll seek to summarise the main points. Many of them are points which have been made within the report already, but I'll summarise those additional letters. So essentially, residents feel they have not been properly consulted. The proposals are an unnecessary loss of green belt. The proposal will result in the destruction of a significant area of habitat and impact on wildlife, and cannot be justified in the context of the climate emergency. There are many pitches around East Leeds, and the pitches are not needed or wanted on this site. The use of artificial pitches is environmentally very poor. The fences, lighting columns and buildings are overbearing, will have an urbanising effect on what is a natural open space, together with too much other development happening in this part of the city, notably at Thorpe Park and the Springs. Concern about impact on existing woodlands. Concern expressed about the loss of vegetation and impact on drainage, given that the lower parts of the site are already waterlogged in the winter and could give rise to flooding. The development will bring additional traffic, noise and light pollution. The height of the floodlighting columns is unacceptable and they'll be visible, particularly in the winter months. Planting will take many years to obscure the view. This is also at odds with the electricity usage and carbon reduction. It's also currently difficult to judge where the lights are to be sited precisely. An objection is raised to 24-hour lighting of paths, as this could give rise to antisocial behaviour, and the widths of some paths means that they could be easily used by vehicles, particularly when children are walking to school. An increased traffic could be a safety hazard to children around Osthorpe Primary School. The proposals do not address additional traffic generation, i.e. where there are competitions particularly concerning if all pitches are to be used at once, as the local roads will be unable to cope. Having lit pitches until 10 p.m. and significant parking means that the area will not be clear of traffic until beyond midnight. Concern is expressed about the potential for overlooking from the pitches towards existing houses. The proposals will be a magnet for crime and antisocial behaviour, and it's queried whether plans have been made to police the area. The site has historic value, once holding John Smeaton's former workshop, house and mill, as well as evidence of an Iron Age settlement. There's a need for further archaeological investigation. No mention has been made of compensation for residents. Green Park would be better as a public park with just trees and footpaths that everybody can enjoy. And the proposals would be better located at Skelton Gate towards junction 45 of the M1 or at Temple Museum has also been mentioned. Additionally, Save South Leeds former golf course community group have raised a similar objection to the scheme in South Leeds and raised particular issue with the use of rubber crumb in astroturf pitches and suggest that they're a major source of microplastic pollution. Reference has been made to a number of scientific sources and studies and note that such environmental contaminants are likely to be particularly harmful to children and vulnerable people, both through inhalation, absorption through the skin, and ingestion of turf infill particles. They state that manufacturers claim that measures can be put in place to prevent the escape of microplastics, but that actually it's very difficult to monitor. The inhalation of turf particles ought to be an area of air quality concern. They note that natural infill alternatives such as cork are possible, though they've not been properly independently tested for health effects. It's felt that the council ought to ensure that the safest playing surface, which would be natural grass. The issues largely reflect what is covered in the report, though there is the issue around the use of astroturf pitches, which are governed by other legislation and guidance outside of the planning system. In terms of other matters arising since the publication of the report, mentioned at the header of the report, the awaiting a response from Yorkshire Water. So they have now responded and stated no objection, subject to conditions to retain the easement over the sewer that runs through the site. So overall, the scheme has significant wellbeing community benefits, which are supported by local and national planning policies. With consideration being given to all other matters, the proposal is considered to comply with both local and national policy, and therefore the recommendation to members is defer and delegate approval to the Chief Planning Officer, subject to the conditions listed in the head of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. We have 6 speakers who wish to speak in objection to the application. Could I now invite them to come to the table? And when ready, you have 6 minutes in which to present your objection. That is 1 minute per person. When you're ready.
Hello, I'm Patricia Maltby and I'm a resident of the Temple Newsham ward, representing local people to raise concerns about the consultation process not being followed appropriately. Nobody in the Temple Newsham ward except the ward councillors have been officially consulted about the proposed development, despite the massive impact on local people and numerous concerns raised. The report states that 2 Zoom meetings took place which were attended by 1 resident. The meetings were not publicised or open invitations, therefore the only attempt at official communication to consult with residents was an information leaflet in January 2021 asking for residents' comments. Despite the lifting of COVID restrictions in July 2021, there's been no invitation or organisation of a public information meeting and no response to various emails from planning officers or local councillors. The report does not reflect reality, and what has actually happened does not meet the requirements of Leeds core strategy. The plans also talk about being for the community and residents. However, 227 car parking and coach drop-off spaces conflicts this and indicates that the development is intended for a much wider district than is what is actually stated.
Hello, I'm Geraldine Turver, and I have already sent 3 letters of objections to the panel, plus a letter to Richard Bergen MP, who is aware of the situation. 4 generations of my family have lived in Barrowby Avenue since 1926. We have seen the green space slowly get built on. This is one development too far. Objection referring to plastic grass on 4 pitches. Plastic grass is made of polyethylene, the same plastic that makes plastic bags. When the sun shines on this, it breaks down into microplastics, which end up in watercourses and eventually into the ocean. Recent research also shows that it gives off plastic particles into the air, which youngsters playing on it and the local community will be breathing in. When the grass is worn out, it will end up in landfill. Leeds City Council advertised on the Sainsbury's roundabout that they are supporting projects to help back climate emergency. I would argue that with this development, they are contributing to climate emergency. Consider it takes 174 plastic noodles just to make 1 plastic carrier bag. How much for 4 plastic football pitches? The council advertised on the road next to Sainsbury's, no mow areas to protect biodiversity, yet just up the road they propose to destroy it. I have taken reliable evidence that the traffic forecast in this planning application is incorrect. If all pitches were used at the same time, complete with players, substitutes, managers, coaches, spectator traffic and local traffic, it would generate traffic well in excess of the maximum forecast in this modelling. Existing roads would not be able to cope with the traffic and it would become a large problem in and around Barrowby Avenue and Barrowby Lane. The traffic forecast is therefore incorrect. We should be conserving natural resources and the natural environment. I ask the council to be true to their word as advertised on the hoardings near Sainsbury's supermarket. They should refuse this development. It is not one for green spaces. It should be on brownfield sites. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Ashdale. I'm my mum's daughter. I am the 4th generation to be raised in this area, and I would also just like to raise my objections, mainly to echo my mum's points. I'll add a few more. So thank you for the presentation. My thoughts were that you acknowledge that there will be some light pollution to the local area, which will affect both residents and the biodiversity in Barrowby Woods. This is in addition to the noise pollution from the normal operation of the site itself whilst in use, as well as air pollution from the traffic. I'd also like to highlight the difference in the proposed mixed scrub versus the impact on mature woodland, as these are not ecologically equivalent. And to further that point, I'd also like to mention the impact of the AstroTurf to echo the points of people before me, and I believe people to come after me. I do not believe that the AstroTurf is suitable for the site whatsoever, particularly in the current climate, and it should be replaced with natural grass. The whole site as itself would be better suited to a brownfield site. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gerald Tetchner. I'm a consulting engineer with 30 years in practice for central government. This proposal goes totally against Leeds' core strategy and commitment to protecting the green infrastructure. 3G AstroTurf is banned in multiple countries, especially in cities such as New York and Paris. The reason for this is the chemicals released from the crumb. I can give you the details if required, but unfortunately, these chemicals are connected to cancer cases, especially among young children who play on these surfaces. Another one, the light pollution caused by this application has not totally addressed and therefore is incomplete, as trees are used in the calculations as part of the screening. These will not be fully to their height for 15 years. Another one, the noise pollution, again has not been totally addressed and studied, is incomplete. On a professional assessment basis, this proposal has multiple grey areas which need correcting, including the traffic impact on Osthorpe Lane from parking, the impact on the health of the local people, especially youngsters who need sleep, and this will go on till 10:30 at night, and also to the players. The chemicals do actually affect them that's come out of the turf, and I can give you details if required. What has happened to the green space and the quiet areas that we were promised for putting up with Thorpe Park and the development? I and others welcome a natural grass green area for multi-sports. Please have a rethink. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Richard Paulingham, and I friends of Geraldine and Jessica here. I visit them quite often and walked from my place in Pendersfields to join them on certain events and walk through Barraby Woods. This is green belt that should be looked after and planted up with more trees. It has over the years been much neglected with dangerous situations with trees falling with ivy growth. It's sometimes quite dangerous walking through there when it's windy. I don't agree with this development regarding the football pitches and the plastic grass. There's many of them already around in the area. Many people, often myself, really don't really appreciate dislike football, to be honest. And voices should be heard too.
If you can wind it up, please, sir.
Okay. The loss of green belt of this area I've known for many years, and obviously used for farming of cereals, and obviously there's been animals in the area, which is quite nice to walk through and see at some quite nice trails that you take in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any members have any questions? Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I'm going to help you with that. So, because your time's up. But the
Yeah, it
gentleman
was
has, the gentleman,
6 minutes were allocated, but unfortunately, someone has taken more than 1 minute. So, sorry.
Well, Chair,
sorry,
Councillor. Can I
Lamb.
ask this gentleman what he'd like to have said if there'd been more time available?
Can I go? I mean, I've prepared for it to be a minute long. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. My name is Shahab Idris, and I'm a resident in the Temple Newsham ward, and I'm also a representative of the Green Party. I coordinate Central and Outer Leeds, that's around 20 wards in the city, and I'm here to support some of the residents which brought this to my attention during the election period, which has just gone. So aside from the 160 plus concerned raised so far, in comparison to the dozen or so showing support, and I would have also added the general comments as objections as well. So it's overwhelmingly riddled with issues, especially concerning lighting, artificial surface, and the disappearance of natural green space home to numerous wildlife. But the report has still concluded in favor of this development. Personally, I do appreciate that land has to be converted to make way for infrastructural development services, which will benefit a certain percentage of the population. But this area of the proposed development is a very peaceful area where individuals and families retreat to disconnect from urban life, and many walk their dogs. There is an initial concern of how this peaceful and tranquil environment will be disrupted. The biggest concern, however, is the erosion of the green space in this part of the city. A couple of statements from the report, which riled me up quite often. The proposed scheme gives rise to significant community benefits which cannot be replicated elsewhere in this part of the city. And then again, it said significant community facilities. It's only football and a cafe. I can't understand what other significant benefits for the community are aside from the football. This then begs the question, to what extent will this development be progressive in terms of enhancing the lives of people across East Leeds and beyond, in comparison to the Greenland, which will be converted at the detriment of wildlife, wild plantation, archaeological significance? I mean, this is pretty much a footballing venture dominated by a single activity, but how many people within the population will actually use this space? And I feel it will be incredibly lower than anticipated. Football is seasonal. Most club teams do not practice and play regularly. The cost benefit may not be as you have stated. Why did approved natural grass pitches and redevelopment of this site get changed to this high cost, resource intensive project when it's principally about playing football? And finally, what will be the cost to community members to use this space, and how will people from very disadvantaged backgrounds access this space? As you have made it clear, this space must become self-sufficient within a certain time frame. So there are two aspects to consider here. First is to maintain high quality services for the public to use. And secondly, that of financial sustainability. How will these two be balanced? When costs become a paramount factor in running of this service, how will you focus on the people who could desperately use this site for their personal growth and development without any access and affordability issues? And there was nothing about the maintenance cost for running this. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Lam, do you want to come back?
The main question that I had, just, and it's to anybody really, is just around the consultation, which is always something this panel is concerned about, and making sure things are done with people, not to them. So what you've obviously described what didn't happen. What sort of consultation do you feel should take place or should have taken place, and what would you like to see happen in terms of making the scheme? I get the sense from the majority, the principle of the scheme, full stop, is the main issue, but are there things that could be done to make it more acceptable?
I'll speak and feel free for anybody to come in, because obviously I think consultation hasn't taken place. The only way that I found out about this was a flyer through my door. I've lived in the area since 1991. I know a lot of people, not just on Barryby Lane and Osthorpe Lane. My children have been to school there, so I know lots of people locally. A lot of people haven't had flyers. A lot of people don't know anything about it. A flyer, there's been no opportunity to discuss concerns. The only thing that we were able to do was to post things on a portal, which was very difficult to access at times. It certainly wasn't user-friendly for a lot of people, because you tried to get on, you couldn't get on, so you had to be determined to go back onto that. I think there should have been some dialogue. There should have been a meeting. I think we should, before the proposals are even developed, we should have been consulted about this. The local area should have been consulted. We were aware there was green football pitches. Absolutely fine to have green football pitches. We've stated that before. Not an issue with the green football pitches. We recognise, the proposals for well-being, but I think the consultation process has just not happened at all. And I feel that it's relatively flawed, and it doesn't work. We've not worked with the local community at all.
Just to add to
Thank
that,
you. Any other member?
Yeah, I'd just like to add as well, I think that we all have a specific issue with the AstroTurf. I think that it's separate to say one thing about football pitches, but I think each one of us has mentioned a particular objection to fake plastic grass.
Go Councillor Ray and then Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. It is just a general question on that, because we've heard one person say that pretty much that they think they shouldn't be used for football or sport in that sense, and there's more general comments around the actual material. So I'll just be curious for some of the residents here, is it the proposed usage that's the main issue in the round, or is it the proposed material? Because we're getting two conflicting statements from two different sets of people.
It's actually the material. Okay. We all support grass and fields for kids to play on. That is the point. We're not against that. Is that okay?
Could I just add as well, the huge toll it will take on mini beasts and little creatures in that area. Plastic grass will destroy all of this. There'll be no insects. 50 insect populations have dropped by 50%. That says it all. This will prevent bird life, it'll prevent hedgehogs, foxes, and so on. And I really do think that this plastic grass should not be going ahead. It's just appalling. In fact, in my opinion, plastic grass should really be banned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. On the site visit earlier, a resident I overheard had mentioned the state of the land as it is now. And when we walked through, we could see it had been cultivated. So my question really is, historically, in say the past 5 years or so, what's that land in question looked like? Has it been set aside to wildlife, or had it been cultivated?
In the last 5 years, it's been farmed, a lot of it, but also some of it was set aside. Now, prior to Thorpe Park development, there used to be 7 acres of short rotational coppicing, which I and my fellow members at the DTI gave approval to be cut down, but there had to be replacement trees for it. This has not happened, and it is not included in here. So again, I can talk from the beginning of this project, Mr. Chairman. I was the DTI officer, and this is wrong.
Good, thank you. Councillor.
Could I just add that in the flyer I got, Temple Newson Ward, Leeds, the council for the Labour Party, March 2021, they promised the planting of 5.8 million trees. And I've looked at the plans for this planting, and I'm not aware of any of these trees that are going to be planted in the Orsthorpe area. And I just think that's rather sad.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions, if that's okay. One's regarding the danger attached to artificial pitches. I'm just curious to, because that's a huge statement you made, that they cause cancer and so on and so forth. I am vaguely aware of this because I was involved in amateur sport for a long time. Now, in America, they banned the use of some of them. There was a whole debate about it, wasn't there? But quite recently, the national governing bodies of the UK have come out and made a statement. I've just actually found it. And it says that there is no risk and they are completely safe. Not my words, I'm reading from this website. So when the statements around them being cancer causing, it was linked to tire crumb, wasn't it? And the use. So can I fish? I think it depends entirely, because there was a whole issue about using tire crumb on artificial pitches. I'm not commenting on artificial versus grass. I'm just particularly commenting on that. But there are, it's been negated quite significantly. And reading through this report, I don't think that tire crumb is going to be used, and I stand to be corrected by one of my colleagues who can perhaps say more about that. Thank you.
Right. Do you know how a AstroTurf pitch is put together? Right.
I have a basic understanding, but I'm not an engineer.
Basically, you put a seal at the bottom, and then you put tire but it's not crumb as you're mentioning. It's actually big chunks. You then do smaller chunks on top, and then you put a seal, then you put some crumb, then you put sand, and then another layer of crumb on top of the green. Now, the thing is that what you're talking about is that crumb has been connected and is actually now proven, and there's a paper just released 4 days ago by a professor from Stirling University confirming that mercury, lead, benzene, and arsenic are all present in the crumb. Now, the thing is that I've mentioned, I haven't actually mentioned, there's actually now 130 cases of children and adults who have been directly connected with cancer cases. Sadly, one of those cases is somebody I know quite a lot about. And his son was going to play professionally for Leeds City. And what's happened is that over the years, he's been practicing and everything else. And now, unfortunately, that particular young man is demised. And it's been connected to all the time as a goalkeeper working and practicing on AstroTurf. So, and I can also bring up multiple other cases. And at the present time, when I talk with the several bodies in London, as I say, I'm connected to them. At the moment, they are now looking at what they're going to do about AstroTurf and how they're going to replace it and take its place. And there are research programs going on now where they're trying to get the green grass to take its place. So it's an ongoing thing, but there is adequate proof now that connects this to this situation. Thank you.
Can I just add as well that it's not the damage that the plastic grass is doing to people, which is shocking, but it's also the huge cost to the planet of producing the stuff in the first place, all the oil that's needed. And Leeds City Council can't say that it's helping to back climate emergency when they're doing all of this. It's just it's a huge cost to the planet, and this is why I disagree with it.
If I can just remind members of the public objectors, when you do come back, please raise your hand if you want to come back rather than just coming onto the mic. So, Councillor Burke, do you want to come back here?
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. It's an incredibly emotive subject, isn't it? Obviously, because nobody ever wants to hear of anybody, at least young people, who are being struck down by any illness. And cancer is always one of those that we never ever want to mention. However, whenever we're talking about emotive subjects, I think we do need to be entirely driven by the facts as they are. Now, because it's very easy to drift off into some kind of, and nobody ever, I'm sure I speak for everybody in this room, nobody wants to hear of any child ever getting cancer. I'm sure that's the case. I just want to read something out, and this is from Sport England, who acts as the repository organisation for all the national and governing bodies. This is their latest statement. And I think it's important, once we start mentioning cancer and things like that, that we put that into some kind of context. So Sport England has expressed its total confidence in the national governing body statement, and their statement subsequently said that they are safe. And the measures they have taken to ensure the health, safety and welfare of users of artificial turf pitches. At present, the preponderance of evidence clearly shows no negative health effects are associated with the crumb rubber infill used in synthetic turf, and the national governing bodies believe they have taken all measures to ensure that pitches they use and fund in England are safe and at present have no known hazard to health. I can't argue that point. I'm just reading Sport England's statement, but I thought it was important to flag that up because obviously, as I said, cancer is really emotive, and Sport England, we do need to rely on as a governing body, because I don't have the knowledge that their professionals do. So we need to be led by the facts and the data and the additional knowledge. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that the point is that now in scientific terms, we can confirm the chemical makeup in the leachates are, as I've just stated, these chemicals are associated with cancer cases. But as you've also turned around and said, at the present time, Sports England and the others have come up with that statement. That statement is actually 2 months old. And what's happened is that they've suddenly brought together all the different parts of research from all around the world. And unfortunately, everyone has come to the same conclusion. To say where I'm coming from, that is a part of rubber, right? You can throw it around, do what you like with it. I was involved with the Welsh Assembly to try and find ways of using rubber, okay? I know a little bit about the subject. I'm emotive with it when I've seen children suffer. And when an old colleague of mine's son dies from it, I will go public if it helps to get other people to look in greater depth at these possible causes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind members, can we concentrate what's before us, and it's on the planning issues that we talk. Obviously, it's important to talk about the health issues, but there are other authorities can deal with those matters. So if there are any questions for objectors, anybody else? In that case, thank you very much for your time. And now we also have the agent, Nick Beckett, who will be speaking in support of this application. When you're ready, you've got 6 minutes to address the panel, please. Yeah, if you can go back to your chairs, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So the proposals under consideration today seek to balance local recreation, health and wellbeing needs with the aspiration to create a parkland for the residents of East Leeds. The facilities are intended for football, so that's 50% local teams and 50% for public use. 125 local teams from East Leeds are already invested for using the pitches at this site, so we know the demand is there. Women's football, so encouraging more girls into sport off the back of the recent Women's Euros success. And not just that, but also walking football and disabled football, all part of that mix and consideration. The Leeds playing pitch strategy shows a deficit of 13 artificial grass pitches across the city. This development at Green Park will assist in meeting that demand. The strategic analysis has generated the number and size of the pitches proposed. 9,000 games were cancelled last year on grass pitches, and if grass surface pitches were pursued, it would not meet the year-round sporting demand of East Leeds residents. The 3G pitch surfaces would be the best standard of artificial pitch, using upstands at the perimeters to retain the rubber crumb and contain microplastics. Sport England's position outlines that artificial grass pitches are recognised as a durable, safe, year-round playing surface, able to withstand intensive use in all kinds of weather. They mean more people can benefit from the social and health benefits of physical activity. The site would be maintained and run by a non-profit charity, and any profit would be reinvested in leisure facilities across the city. Their business model is financially sustainable and is designed to ensure that no government subsidy is required. Vehicle access to the site is proposed via Thorpe Park to the new car park, away from residential areas. The new car park is required to control vehicular movements to the site and prevent cars parking on neighbouring residential streets. There are 25 EV charging points and grasscrete surfacing adjacent to existing mature trees to minimise environmental impact. It is not anticipated or intended to bus people in to this site from the wider Leeds area, and the furthest registered club is based in Garforth. Enhanced pedestrian and cycle links from Orsop Lane to Green Park also encourage sustainable travel and promote well-being. Levels and surfaces have been designed to be fully accessible. The pavilion building accommodates community facilities such as a flexible cafe space, toilets including a changing places facility, cycle storage and a roof terrace for viewing all sports. It is not intended to have a licence bar. Adjacent residences are over 100 metres away from the pitches with tree planting between. Pitches are set down in the landscape so that the top of the fencing is in line with the existing ground level adjacent to the houses. All floodlights will be to Sport England compliant dark sky fittings designed to control light spill. Modelling of the floodlighting shows light spill is controlled to the inner edge of the woodland. The usage charts demonstrate an anticipated 7 to 8 p.m. finish in the evening at the latest. Floodlights would not be used on Saturdays. Acoustic modelling has been undertaken of existing and proposed situations, and no increase in background noise is anticipated, primarily due to the adjacent M1 motorway. The facility has been designed around the buried scheduled ancient monument of Grimm's Ditch and has been enhanced through a grass mound with a sculpture to mark its location. This approach has the support of Historic England. The proposals seek to maximise on-site biodiversity through rich habitats such as wildflower meadows, hedgerows and rainwater detention ponds. These ponds are part of a sustainable drainage system that also adopts rainwater storage below the pitches themselves and the car park to avoid additional pressure on surface water sewers. The biodiversity net gain calculation submitted with the application shows an increase of 2.5% in habitat units and an 11% increase in hedgerow units. An area has been identified within the overall Green Park development to ensure rich habitats are maintained. Wildlife underpasses are proposed to the site under the access road to avoid animals crossing the road surface. Also included in the proposals are 4 bat boxes and 12 bird boxes to ensure a diverse wildlife. The pavilion building is to meet the highest standard of sustainability standards with a BREEAM excellent target, above and beyond the council's current planning policy. Ground source heat pumps will provide renewable energy to the building and more than halve the demand from the grid. So in conclusion, the proposals submitted with this application have been tailored to respond to the comments that were made at the public consultations and statutory consultees. The scheme is considered to provide significant benefits to the local community whilst addressing ecological, sustainable and accessibility factors in a long-term strategy.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Anderson, then Councillor Lamb.
I apologise to the members, but as usual, I've got a lot. So the council are trying to stop people. Well, rather, let's look at it another way. The government's intention is that they will be removing petrol and diesel cars in the future. So what future proofing are you going to put in? Because you've not got many EV charging points. And if we are going to convince people and convert them over to electric cars, then the vast majority of people will be using them eventually. Whether I agree or disagree with that's not irrelevant. The fact is that's the stated objective of the government and also of the council as well. So what are you going to do to future-proof? The second one, presumably you will be holding competitions there. So where do you see the additional changing facilities being constructed when you've got multiple teams who are coming along? Where would you see them being located? Because go around the city and a lot of the good areas we've got have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams turning up to play on the same pitch because it's a tournament. And how would that operate? Whereabout on the thing have you got your officials and referees accommodation? I didn't see anything specifically marked. I can see plenty of changing rooms. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of changing rooms. So where are the officials that you're going to have coming along? Because particularly if you get good quality teams coming, the officials will expect to be given quite a high standard to go and change into. When you were presenting your information to the council, did you come up with any distance visuals? Because we've heard a lot from the residents this afternoon that this is going to be visible, that's going to be visible. Have you come up with any visuals that would show? I mean, an example this morning is when we were on site and we were on Osthorpe Lane, we were talking about the floodlights, and the officer pointed out that the pitch was down in the dip, which meant that in theory, there should be limited visibility of the floodlights at that point. We've not seen anything today, and that would go to reinforce the point. You know, did you prepare them and they just not, and the officer has made a choice and not portrayed them. Consultation. Why, when the applicant is Leeds City Council, are Leeds City Council letting their own residents down? You're fine, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think you are connected to Leeds City Council, but this is Leeds City Council who are applying, and Leeds City Council have the highest possible standards for consultation. Where those of us who are on the development plans panel have recently been through looking at the best way of carrying out consultation. I think this would be an example as to why the council gets it wrong, to be quite frank, if the truth be told. Then to go on, where do you see, you mentioned all these teams that are interested. How many of them actually come from what I'll call the Seacroft, Hare Hills, Burmantoff, Temple Newsome side of the city? Because I don't think they're going to drive around Elor or go out to Thorpe Park to go into the car park. They will come in and park in and around Osthorpe, to be quite frank, because that's the closest way to go. And anybody who lives anywhere near a school or anywhere near sports pitches know that people pile in to the nearest possible parking spaces. And the final thing is, you've seen the objections about public health, about the pitches. Have you approached Leeds City Council's public health to get your I's dotted and your T's crossed, that they have confirmed to you that there are no health impacts, and that Leeds Public Health are relying on some of the information that my colleague has already put in to the public domain? Thank you.
That's a lot of questions. So if I could just go back. So EV. So the first question was about EV charging points. Is that correct? So I understand what has been submitted is in line with Leeds City Council's current planning policy. I think a couple more spaces have been requested. I'm sure those could be accommodated.
Come back to that one straight away. This is Leeds City Council that are making the application. So Leeds City Council should volunteer to go further than the minimum standards necessary, as showing leadership for the rest of the city, who we hope will then follow climate emergency. And so Leeds should be leading on this and coming up and exceeding all standards, not sticking behind, let's go to the minimum standards. Leeds should always be exceeding standards.
That's something I would need to take up with the client, unfortunately. But as far as we say, from planning policy perspective, that the scheme is compliant. Yeah. In terms of competitions, the existing car park, sorry, the proposed car park is oversized for what it needs to be for what is the anticipated demand. So for competitions, and the reason for that, let me finish. The reason for that is to serve as a car park to access the rest of the Green Park area. So then you've talked about the officials.
Changing facilities for additional teams. If you've got 11 players from each team, and say you've got 6 teams there, that's 66 plus another 5 substitutes. We're getting up to a lot of people needing to change in these changing areas. It's just, and in some cases, if we end up, which I think the way we're going, we end up with mixed games being played, it's going to be very problematic in terms of how you would separate that up.
So the brief of what has been included within the pavilion building has been developed in line with sporting requirements. They're the experts, and it would be part of the management of the service. In terms of officials, change rooms, they are included. Okay.
Councillor Anderson, if you can let the gentleman finish, and then if you do want to come back, and I'll give you the opportunity. So please, sir.
Okay. In terms of consultation, I appreciate that is a hot topic and one that is a very emotive. Having spoken to the client, the consultations were planned to be undertaken, but obviously it was during the COVID pandemic, so no face-to-face consultations could have taken place prior to the application being taken place. There were, my understanding is there were 2 online consultations, and flyers were posted to a number of residents, to 2,500 residents, as far as I'm aware. Consultations were also undertaken with ward members as well. So clearly it's not ideal, given that we're in the pandemic, not able to undertake a face-to-face consultation, but other measures were put in place. So what was the one in terms of car parking? Sorry.
The issue I was thinking about the car park is you mentioned all these teams that were coming.
Yeah.
And what concerns me is you've got adequate car parking at the Thorpe parking, not disputing that under any circumstances whatsoever. But if these teams are coming from the areas I mentioned, the shortest place to go is to actually into the Osthorpe area and the bottom end. That's the shortest route. And why go additional mileage if you're just down the road? I picked intentionally places that were near at hand, so people would come down. They would maybe be going to the supermarket. That's my logic.
So the car park is located directly adjacent to the entrance of the pavilion. It is the shortest place to access the actual services. We cannot see why anyone would want to come through local areas and park on residential streets if sufficient car parking is available directly adjacent to the playing facilities. And I think this has been verified by the transport statement. I believe that answers the questions.
Okay. Right. Can we now move on to Councillor Lam? Sorry.
To come back on was consultation. We've been out of the pandemic for a while. You knew that this application was coming before panel. You knew the level of objections that were there because they're there for you to see on the. Why didn't you hold a consultation exercise, say 3 or 4 months ago, that you could have then said to today? That's all I'm saying. I mean, I accept what you said about the pandemic. I'm not disputing that, but we're now out of it. You knew this application was coming forward soon. You could have done it even in the last 6 weeks, to be quite frank. Once the local elections were out the way, it would have then been out of the political domain, and it would have been a good opportunity to let the residents see some of the graphics that we've seen today, which might have convinced them that on balance, this isn't a bad thing overall.
So the original planning application for this development was submitted in December 2020. So for the public consultation to have influenced the design, it would have had to have been held before that time.
Thank you. Councillor Lam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Anderson has covered most of it, but most things are possibly considered. But I do want to dwell on the consultation. And the first, I feel probably slightly unfair to you that I don't think this is entirely your responsibility, but you're the person who's been sent to answer our questions. So I'm afraid I have to direct it at you. So I think the first is frustration, again, that when it's the City Council putting forward an application, that we haven't consulted properly with the local community. And I don't think the excuse of the pandemic and the timing washes at all, because we're sat here in now August 2022, not December 2020. And there's been plenty of opportunities where there could have been face-to-face engagement or consultation to happen. So my question is, how do we fix that now? Given we're now in a tricky spot where we're being asked to consider this application. I think it's accepted there hasn't been sufficient consultation with the community. But we have to make a decision on the merits of it. So how do we fix and involve the community in the next steps of this?
That's something we would have to work closely with Leeds City Council's client department to answer.
Do you want to come back or you're okay?
I'm not sure I'm not really satisfied with the answer, but that's the answer I've got.
Yeah. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. There's obviously been quite a heavy emphasis here on football. I'm just wondering, from the client's point of view, which is obviously the City Council, why this has not been more envisioned as a multi-sports playing facility, particularly bearing in mind that will have an impact on the type of service that's been used. So, for example, rugby doesn't go very well necessarily on AstroTurf. So it seems if we're putting quite a significant sum of money into this, why has been the approach of the client, which in this case is the City Council, to be primarily towards football rather than as a multi-sport impact? And I mean, I'll leave that for there because I think that's my main question at the moment.
I believe the Park Life initiative is funded from central government via the Football Foundation. I believe the Park Life initiative is funded from central government via the Football Association, and that is the primary focus. But it is intended not just to be for club teams, and it is intended to be for other activities to encourage people who haven't historically been able or wanted to participate in sport to do that. I believe there is it is targeted towards walking football, disabled football, as well as using the recent Women's Euro success to encourage more girls into football as well, and women into football.
So based on that, what's kind of being put forward is that this is going to be to a certain extent for multi-sport, but actually what we're talking is about multiple iterations of football rather than actually multiple different types of sport. Because I think, it does go to the type of service, but it also goes to the usability. Now, I may not accept comments earlier on that nobody wants a football pitch. I think Leeds is quite a football supporting city, but it does go to the question of the usability of the space. And as much as the main funding may be coming from Park Life, and obviously that is heavily linked to the football, it just seems again, it's probably going on to comments, or probably it just seems like it's a missed opportunity.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Three questions. The first is, when you keep referring to the client, who are you talking about? Is it just, it's not obviously not just the body of the council, is it a certain department that's instructed you, or who is the listing client?
So the client team is made up of multiple stakeholders. So there is a team in city development, as well as the FA and Sport England as well. So it's and I think Active Leeds have an active interest as well. So it's a bit of a broad client team.
Thanks. I just want to come back to the AstroTurf issue, and I wondered whether you'd done any assessment, or whether you could provide any information on the balance of where sometimes when we're looking at the environmental impact, we have to balance it with usability. So off the top of my head, I can see how you can use AstroTurf for more hours because if it's not raining, etc. I can see how if you've got AstroTurf, you don't have to mow the lawn 3 times using 2-stroke or diesel engine and the emissions. I can see how you don't have to reseed it, put fertilizer on it twice a year. I'm a keen gardener, I do all this at home. So I can see the benefits of all that. And then I think the other side, which is, so we just had a heat wave where we were all warned not to let the dogs out on AstroTurf type grass if you've got it, because it reaches temperatures of 100 degrees. So clearly you ain't going to send 22 chaps out or ladies out doing the football on 100-degree temperature. So is there an assessment anywhere that gives us some facts as decision makers that we can look and see the balance and the rationale behind why AstroTurf is proposed? And the other point on traffic, which I think you missed, and perhaps this is when you don't get local people sort of doing these plans, this is what kind of comes through. And it's Grimsdyke, by the way, not Grimsdyke. But Councillor Anderson asked the question around parking, and what I think you missed the point is that what we were asking is, if you are a resident of Austhorpe and you don't live immediately overlooking the site, so if I lived further back towards Cross Gates, I'm not going to travel all the way around to the car park you're providing. I'm going to jump in my car rather than walk and go and park on Austhorpe Lane, right opposite the houses that are currently there, and walk in. So the question is, what mitigations have you put in place to try and prevent those traffic movements from happening? For example, WL lines, etc.
So the initiative, the Park Life Initiative, just getting back to the surface, the Park Life Initiative is intended to make sure that sporting facilities can be made open year round. That is the primary reason for the AstroTurf surface, and to so it's a national initiative. This isn't just for Leeds. It's rolled out nationally. The Park Life Initiative. Leeds City Council is receiving central government funding for this initiative, and it will be for the benefit of local teams. With regards to the surface, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to AstroTurf versus grass. As you've said yourself, you probably have to water grass pitches. Using water consumption has been horrendous recently. With regards to, we've got a hose pipe ban coming in imminently, if it's not in already. So therefore, it's a balance. It's a balance, really.
At what cost?
Can I remind members, this is a plans panel meeting where let the speaker please speak, and I don't want any heckling if with respect. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sorry, regarding parking, it's something we'd have to discuss with the transport assessor. I can't say at this moment in time I'm fully au fait with the extent of the offsite highways.
Okay, can I just have a pause for about 5 minutes or so, because we've got an officer who's got to leave at 3 o'clock. So if there are any questions for this particular officer, Mr. Atkinson, who's the principal engineer, is he? Sorry, a lighting engineer. Sorry. So if there are any questions for him before he leaves, will that be okay with members? Yeah. Mr. Mitchell.
I have to plead ignorance in terms of floodlighting and its the tech side of it. How do the shades work so that the floodlighting only hits the areas we're aiming for? And I guess for me, there's a difference between that shining elsewhere and just being able to see the pitch.
Okay, so the lighting design consultants that have been used, they have followed all recommendations with regards the levels of the lighting for that type of facility, the upwards light spillage, wasted light, etc. And shields and louvers can be fitted to lanterns and columns to prevent backspill of light towards any direction. It's like a retrofit piece of kit can be used, either fastened to the lantern or to the column. And that's basically how you prevent light spillage not going where you don't want it to go. That with the type of lantern you use in the first place, which puts the light in a specific area, so the light spread is forwards, outwards, downwards, rather than upwards, backwards, where you don't want it. Now, looking at the proposals that were put forward, everything's been followed within the industry guidelines. Everything, mitigation measures have been put in place. Time restrictions will also benefit that. If you were to ask me, are residents going to be able to see a glow? Yes. You can't say that. You light an area that's not lit in the middle of an open space, there will be a glow, but direct light spill towards where it's not wanted, it has basically been eradicated by the lighting design itself.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, that is roughly what I anticipated in terms of the tech. I didn't know if there was something fancier with floodlights. So have we got money planned within the budget for fitting after the project is completed? Have we got extra money to fit those louvres and shades retrospectively? Is question comeback one. Number two is, have we had any sort of reflection on the reflectivity of the surfaces in terms of the building materials we're using and the impact that the floodlights hitting those will have on it then reflecting back out of the area? And then the final question, just as a little swerve ball, is the car park, is that likely to be lit A at all, and B, will it be lit right till 11? Because I know the light's coming off at 10 for the pictures, but the main cafe area isn't. And obviously the car park's actually closest, I think, to residential areas. Thank you.
Okay, so with regarding funding for louvers, shields, which could potentially be retrofit, I'm here as the Leeds City Council street lighting engineer, so I'm asked to comment on planning issues. That that lighting will never be mine. It will belong to the development. So whether there's budget in there for retrofit louvers and shields, I don't honestly know. You would have to ask the the gentleman at the end. Reflectivity off the surface, then you know the light coming down illuminates the pictures. You inevitably do get reflectivity off the surface, but the equipment that's been specified is to give the right lighting levels for that type of facility. So there's no, I can't really say, oh yes, you'll get a load of reflection or you'll not get a load of reflection. It depends on the color of the grass or fake grass. You know, certain stone reflects different to tarmac, reflects different to concrete. But as I say, that's that reflectivity on a sports pitch is not my area of expertise. I've just been asked to comment on the lighting levels and the type of equipment that's used. And then what was your swerve ball?
The time of the car park.
Time of the car park. Okay, yeah. So obviously people will finish playing. So the pitches, the floodlighting on the pitches can be knocked off at whatever time the curfew is. But obviously after the game, you've got people will be using the facility and or finishing getting changed and then wanting to get safely to the cars. So there is inevitably going to be some use or need for lighting after the floodlights go to finish to allow safe passage to the vehicles that they've used to get there in the first place. I believe they are, yes.
Right, I'm only taking questions at this stage for Mr. Atkinson. So I've got Councillor Lamb and then Councillor Sorry, Councillor Stevenson, did you want to come back? Yeah, just, yeah, I've got you, and then I've got Councillor Anderson, and then Councillor Flint has been waiting for some time, but I'm sure that your question was to the agent.
Yeah.
Right, so yeah, Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks. So, yeah, on lighting. Councillor Anderson made a good point earlier that we haven't seen any drawings around how this impacts, and that would have been quite useful from CGI side. So from a lighting point of view, I'm looking at the pictures here. Is it does the flood lighting go all four sides of the pitch? Yes or no?
Sorry, yes, you light it from music to get decent quality lighting. You light from them all sides to give that uniform levels that's needed for sports activities.
So this will depend on the lumens that you use, I guess, and the light bulbs. But is it not possible to put the flood lighting on the southern edges of pitch 2, 3, 4, and 1, so that you increase the lumens in a row of lights to light the whole pitch, in which case all the lighting would be directed north where there's no residential housing? Because the problem is, at the minute, you talk about backplates, which is perfect for the southern positioned lights, but the problem is for the residents who are overlooking it, they're then looking directly into the northern lights that are facing them. So the backplates aren't going to stop anything. So can you just put it on one side and are the lumens strong enough to light the whole pitch?
The simple answer to that is, can you? Yes. Would it work? No. You light a sports pitch from all sides so that the levels that are on there are uniform for the players. If I light a road, I can light a road from one side or the other side, or a staggered arrangement. But if you're lighting a sports pitch, it's to get that overall consistent lighting level so sports can be played safely.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Is there anywhere in the Leeds area where residents could go and have a look and see what it's like? You know, in other words, has this type of lighting, to the best of your knowledge, been used anywhere else in the city that they could go and see what actually the effect is? Because in my area, we've got a lot of floodlights for various things, and after a while, you don't actually notice them, to be if the truth be told. And I think maybe it's the fear of what might occur. And if we were able to say to them, well, if you go to such and such a location, you'll see it in situ and you'll see how controlled it is. Are you aware of any place where residents could go and look and see this type of lighting and the way pitches are lit up?
I suppose you could pick any illuminated sports pitch, but you can't pick one like this one, because this one is 4 pitches lit at this high, sat this far down in the landscape. Any illuminated sports pitch, you could go to any illuminated sports pitch, and I'm not talking about that's just been lit with road lighting like one of the multi-games centres that are in a park, but any professional, semi-professional illuminated sports pitch would give you the same effect, because that would be lit from all 4 sides.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's 2 parts to this, following on from what Councillor Bithell was saying, which is I'm trying to get my head around what the change in lived experience will be for people that live close by, and a concern from your answers, and not a criticism of you, you're just here to give advice, is that consideration's been given to how to stop the glare and overspill of light from the pitches, but has it been given to the light in the site overall? And it sounded to me like it hasn't particularly. And I just want to understand, if I had a house or a garden that was backing on to the site, what's going to be different from when all this is in situ to how it is now?
I mean, all I can say is that you know, if this is an area that wasn't lit, and is now going to be lit, you are obviously going to notice a difference from the glow. I can't say how that would affect these ladies and gentlemen behind me, because depends on the angle of their house to the lighting, depends on what their usual view is. It's a sort of an impossible question to answer. I'm sorry.
McKenna.
Thank you, Chair. We have had examples before of lighting for Headingley Cricket Ground and Leeds Rhinos, and those venues are surrounded by housing in the Headingley area on all four sides, and there was protest against it. But at the end of the day, I go to watch cricket and Rhinos regularly, and really there isn't any issue from local people. We don't get any complaints. If you go down the road a bit, Kirksall Lane to Kirksall, there's Archie Gordon, which is a rugby. Oh, by the way, it has synthetic surface as well, and Leeds Rhinos play on it. During the flood in 2015, it was totally destroyed, and they had to relay it. So professional rugby players seem very happy playing on it. Although I will say Emerald Stadium is natural grass, and that's a better surface for playing rugby. If you go up to the top then, and we were talking about a higher level, and you look at Beckett Park, they have a running track and they have some sports facilities on Leeds Metropolitan University. And that's at a very high level. Where I live, when I come down Port Scott's Park, I can clearly see it on the horizon, and there's naturally not much way of stopping it. So it's a high level. But we've dealt with these all the time, and they usually can be controlled. And I think at the end of the day, we should recognise that, and we have listened to people. As you know, I chair City Plans Panel, and I was there for the floodlights and the new Headingley Stadium rebuild, and all these questions were answered to the satisfaction of planners. And indeed, they've been in operation now some years, and we don't get much comeback from local people. So perhaps I'm saying maybe the concerns are a little bit premature, and maybe after a while they simply won't notice it, like I don't notice it where I live in Kirksall.
Thank you for that, Councillor McKenna. If there aren't any other questions for Mr. Atkinson, in that case, thank you for your time, and do apologise that you're 5 minutes late. So can we now come back to the agent? Councillor Flint.
Thank you. Just got a couple of questions. I guess we've heard from local residents that the main issue really is the use of the AstroTurf and the plastics in that, the kind of more so, I think we were hearing, than the noise and the lighting issues that might be caused. So I think we've got to decide, can we justify that? Do the benefits of getting more people exercising and involved in sport kind of outweigh the use of plastic in a climate emergency that the council have declared? So that's kind of what we're wrestling with. So I just want to understand a little bit more, like, do you know how many more matches can be played with the AstroTurf, and also just about the maintenance of it? Obviously they have like a lifespan, so how long would one of these pitches last for, and then how would it be disposed of? Is there any recycling possible? Where is all that plastic going to go? And how long do they last? So long term, we've got to decide, is this a good, do the benefits of getting people exercising outweigh the extra plastic that's going to be involved? And also along like that, getting more people involved in sport, like, are the right people going to be using this? So there's obviously a big car park, so people coming from outside. You talked about getting 50% of local people using the pitches. So is that already in place? Like, has there been engagement with schools and youth groups and girls groups particularly? Like, how does that work? And, you know, I know from like my kids using these pitches, it's not cheap. So is there subsidies in place to get people using the pitches that might struggle to afford it? And, you know, I'm struggling with the consultation question as well, and just wonder, you know, it's not that difficult to announce a meeting in the next few weeks for the residents. So is that something that you're willing to do? Because it just seems you can't do this without really engaging and listening to the residents and addressing all their concerns. So could you please hold a meeting? Thank you.
So I'm just trying to get my pieces of paper in place. So the information I have in front of me with regards to the pitches, the high quality, consistent playing surface is the ideal environment to play the game and for young people to learn. With regards to maintenance programs, pitches can be heavily used all year round with no decline in quality. It is stated that they almost completely negate fixture cancellations during winter months, helping football to be the key part of regular physical activity habits. In the 2019 playing season, 9,641 community football matches were called off due to poor pitch quality in West Riding. That's 150,000 games cancelled in England. So it does have a significant impact on the ability to play sports. In regards to lifespan, I don't actually have those figures to hand, unfortunately, but it's something we can find out. In terms of the right people, there's been extensive research done by, I believe it's Active Leeds. They've pulled together a chart, which I did refer to in the original presentation, with regards to anticipated usage, clubs that have already expressed interest. Whether they've been, I would highly suspect they've been in touch with schools. I can't speak on behalf of Active Leeds, unfortunately, but in terms of affordability, this is not a profit-making venture. It's purely meant to be self-sustaining, and any profit is going to be reinvested back into sporting facilities in Leeds. And with regards to consultation, again, it's something I'd speak to the client representative when they're available with regards to another consultation. Okay.
So you can't say what it would cost an individual person at the moment, or if there's kind of a, you know, if there would be any subsidies?
I don't have those figures with me, unfortunately. Sorry.
Take it you guys were having a consultation then?
Apparently the prices are subsidised. Apologies.
Okay, Councillor Mitchley.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, do all the pitches have to be artificial for the project to be viable long term? And one of the concerns seems to be the products used for the infill of the artificial pitch. I believe there's organic materials available for infill. Have they been explored?
So in terms of all the pitches needing to be artificial, the business model is based on, and the fact that it is self-sustaining is and the usage is based on them all being artificial and being able to use year round. It's not to say we can't have a conversation with Sport England and the and Active Leeds to establish whether one or two could be grass. I don't have that information on me. In terms of the actual 3G pitch itself, as I say, I think one of the ward members did read out the position statement from Sport England, says that it's not deleterious to health. There's no evidence of it. But in regards to recycling, it's something we can look into. I don't have that information to hand, unfortunately.
Are you okay with that? Yeah.
there is research and development being undertaken regular all the time on these sort of sports pitches, and Sporting England statement does talk about that.
Yeah, I just wondered with the organic materials, obviously it's a bit more, well, it is environmentally more friendlier, isn't it, than artificial anyway. But in terms of, it would be interesting to know what the financial position would be in terms of viability if there were other options with maybe having 2 grass pitches or 3 grass pitches. I'm just interested to know what the use is throughout the year of artificial pitches, and whether it's consistent throughout the year, because I'm sure matches are also cancelled due to poor weather, whether it's on artificial or grass pitches. So I think it'd be handy to have more information about usage, and again about the viability, and even if it means half and half with the pitches, just to look at options so we have more understanding of it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Bithell.
Thank you. I also have a range of questions, some of which you may have to take away. So there's been talk in the report about these 10 football teams who are willing to use it for their training. And I just want to know how much our sustainability model is based on this, in the sense that actually the likelihood of 2 or 3 football teams training in the same place on the same night, because there's only 7 days in a week, and obviously you also need to take out match days because you're not going to have people training on their match days normally, is going to mean that they're going to double up, which means they're going to be looking at similar groups of people to form the teams. So I'm just wondering whether or not actually we need to be thinking more along the lines of aiming for 1 football team to train there a night in order for our sustainability plans to work out. And if you've got any thoughts around that, that would be really helpful for me to understand. There's been a lot of talk about the rubber crumb, and a similar question actually to the last council. I'm unsure as to why, if there's such objection to it, why we wouldn't be using sand dressing, for example. There's talk in the report of the contamination and avoiding contamination on the pitches from the wider area, but very little about the contamination of the pitches elsewhere. Now, I played rugby on a rubber crumb surface at university, badly, I might add, and it gets everywhere, and you end up taking it everywhere with you on the way home. So actually, there's going to be quite a spread of this rubber crumb going away on each of the players, which obviously would be safer if it was sand rather than rubber crumb. So can you give me an indication of the mitigations we've got for that? I have a similar venture in my ward, and there's real issues with people breaking into play when it's closed and at night. And actually the fences don't necessarily stop them as effectively as we might hope. So I'm interested in what ways we're going to ensure that there isn't that ASB element coming in. Could you give me an indication, and this is one of the ones you might have to take away rather than answer here, on what the difference in cost of Astro to build and maintain would be versus grass with a drainage system and maintenance? Because actually there are ways to avoid grass pitches having issues with waterlogging. And on a similar note, can you give me an indication of the difference in infiltration rate between AstroTurf and grass? It talked about the current area being a learning environment, and actually if it's previously been agricultural land, I'm interested if we have any indication of who's using the land now as a learning environment. One of the objections talked about it, and I can't think what it would be being used as really. And then on a similar thing, was it actually accessible to the public when it was farmed any more than it would be with the new thing? And finally, the toilets in there, can we have confirmation that they will all be gender neutral, please?
So we'll start with these one. There will be gender neutral toilets. In terms of the learning environment now, it's not something I'm able to comment on, but I believe there is a public footpath through the site now, and that will be maintained, and there will be another one added, so it's more permeable. I don't have statistics on infiltration rates to hand, unfortunately, but it's something we can look into. And I don't have the costs for the difference between grass pitches and AstroTurf to hand, unfortunately. With regards to break-ins and antisocial behaviour, I think if you compare it to the previous scheme, which was open grass playing fields, what Leeds City Council have found in the past, in order to protect those, what they found is a lot, they have antisocial behaviour on those pitches if they're not fenced, and that happens regularly. I think to the point where you end up with glass bottles and other detritus on the fields, to the point where they're not used. So fencing them in will have a significantly positive impact on reducing crime and antisocial behaviour. With regards to the maintaining of rubber crumb on the pitches themselves, there are boot cleaning facilities within the pitches themselves. So you're not bringing rubber crumb off site. So there are boot washing. There's channels around the perimeter of the pitches to stop the rubber crumb leaving the boundary of the pitch itself, and there will be upstands to prevent rubber crumb leaching off the surface. And I couldn't give you an answer personally regarding the two teams playing simultaneously, but it's something we can pick up with Active Leeds and Sport England.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your answers. I think the one I just want to come back on quickly is the rubber crumb being taken off. Boot cleaning is great, but I cannot get across just how much it goes literally everywhere. Boot cleaning won't be enough to mean that rubber crumb does stay specifically where we want it. I really think we need to make sure that we are putting something in place, and maybe searching other parts of the country to find out what works for them, so that it's not being taken off site. Thank you.
Councillor Ray.
This might actually turn into a question for the officer. I'm going to ask the question because we've talked about this rubber crumb quite a lot, but it's a really actually quite fundamental question. The funding from Parklife, does it require it to be AstroTurf, or does it give flexibility? Because if the funding is specifically linked to an AstroTurf service, then we've had a lot of conversation about something which actually makes very little difference, because if we decline it, then the money doesn't come. So can someone just clarify, if possible, is it a condition that it must be an artificial service, or is there flexibility within the funding from Parklife?
I'm advised that it is a condition of the funding from the FA.
But to be specific, first receive the money from the FA via Parklife, it is a condition that it must be artificial.
Yes, that's correct, as far as I've been made aware.
Perhaps that should be the first question we asked earlier.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else indicating. Before I bring the officers, shall we have a 10 minutes comfort break? Yeah? Thank you. ask David to pick some of the things up what we discussed earlier on.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. This is just to address some of the comments that have been raised during the questions, and it might help set a bit of the context in terms of where members want to go with this particular application. The first thing I wanted to just touch upon was the discussion in and around about the use of AstroTurf and the artificial surface and the impact that that has on health. It takes me back a little bit to the debates that we used to have at Plans Panel about telecommunications masts and the implications of health that came from that. What members will be aware of, and maybe members of the public won't be aware of that, is the role of planning. We're limited to dealing with planning matters, and we're not here to duplicate other legislation. So the matters that may arise or may not arise from the use of a particular surface and the health implications isn't governed by planning regulations. That's governed by health regulations, and the government has been very clear that it's not our duty as in the realm of planning to try and duplicate or usurp other regulations that exist. So that's not really an area that we can go into. In terms of the precise nature of the playing surface, again, it's not really a matter for planning to be involved in terms of whether they use sand or whether they use rubber chippings. That's an operational. Once you take the health aspect out of it, that's really an operational aspect. We've got no evidence before us, or we've got no expertise to advise on the sustainability of that. But I think that debate is really very much in the margins, especially when you have regard to the fact that these sort of playing surfaces are used throughout the city. But I perfectly understand where members are coming from, because your questions are very much aimed at getting a betterment in terms of the nature of the facility and just testing what's before us in terms of the acceptability of that. So that moves on to the issue in terms of the consultation. This is a really difficult one for us, because it's obviously, this is something which is raised at Plans Panel time and time again. And I can understand members, especially when you're faced with an application which is coming from Leeds City Council, being concerned about the nature of the consultation that the council is putting forward as applicant. But as members will be aware, that is not a matter for which we can refuse planning permission on. You've got a decision about deferral, but ultimately we cannot refuse planning permission on the basis of the nature of the consultation. In this, it's clear that the applicant did do, although it was constrained by the circumstances that existed at the time, consultation prior to the application coming in, because they did that in November. The application came in December. They've done their flyers. This is what members have got to have regard to. We've obviously got an awful lot of a big response to the application through the publicity that we've given it in terms of the receipt of the application, putting up a site notices. We've got over, I think, probably last count, over 200 at least objections to the application, and many and a few more representations on top of that. And you've also heard the views of local residents. So that's a difficult one for us. But in light of the strength of the feeling, and I've heard that the applications come from city development, we'll raise these matters with the Director of City Development, Martin Farrington, for him to take forward. And we'll pass on the strength of the Plans Panel feeling, no matter what the outcome of this particular decision, the consideration in this particular application is today. So I think that just really covers off the main points that I wanted to cover. Ultimately, it's for members to reach a view on what is before us in terms of the planning merits of the 4 pitches, the car parking and the clubhouse, and the associated landscaping and other mitigation measures which go with this particular proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. That was really helpful. Any members have any questions for officer or officers? Lam?
I'm probably straight into comments and proposing a way forward, to be honest, Chair, because I say you're quite frustrated, and I get the same sense around the table, particularly as this is an application by Leeds City Council. I have to say I'm embarrassed that we are not being the exemplar in how to bring something like this forward and how to engage with the community and do things properly. So I feel we've heard too much this morning. We don't have that information to hand. Sorry, this afternoon, we don't have that information. We don't have the answer to that question. And clearly this is something that's being done to the community rather than with them. So my proposal, Chair, is that we defer this for a cycle, but with specific purposes. One, for the client, we'll call them, to properly engage with the community and come back on the specific issues I think that are lacking. So consultation is one, parking is one, floodlights and the wider lighting impact. So it's not just about the impact of the floodlights, but the whole site. The lifespan of the AstroTurf, I accept what David said. It's not for us to consider what the surface is. I think it is for us to consider what the lifespan is, what the impact is on the climate emergency then, and what the recycling opportunities are. I think that is something for us to consider. Accessibility and community use, and I think we've heard the answer that no, it can't. We've got to consider it's AstroTurf. It's approve it or don't approve it. I don't think we can consider whether it's grass or not. But that would be my proposal, Chair, that we defer it so that those things can take place and we can have the community can get the consultation it should have had, and we can have the information that we need to be able to make a decision.
Before I take your proposal, Councillor McKenna, you were showing interest to speak.
I was, Chair, and I'm still asking a question. I'm sorry, which obviously an important one to me before we go into yours. And it's to Andrew. Hi, Andrew. You've had an easy afternoon so far. Is the community facilities available for local community, or is it for any? Is it just for football related thing? Because it seems to me that it would be very valuable for local people, local communities to gather and discuss things. And basically that's my question. It's a yes or no job, really, isn't it?
Yes, the answer is yes. My understanding is it's fully open to the local community, so people can go there, have a coffee, walk around the park in general. As I mentioned in my presentation, there are 2 meeting rooms in the building as well, so they could be used for relatively small scale community functions, meetings and so on as well.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a question. It's picking up a question Councillor Anderson asked earlier of the agent, just in relation to parking on the southern side of the site. We've heard that actually in a perfect world everyone's going to go to the car park, but what mitigation measures are highways proposing, if any, around any incidental parking towards the south of the site, people using what's on the map indicated as the blue footpath into the site, because there's interconnectivity. So what kind of mitigation measures are proposed to try and help residents in that area not have a lot of unintentional parking?
Okay, so currently there are some restrictions associated with the school and nursery on Allthorpe Lane. At the moment, we haven't requested any additional parking controls along Allthorpe Lane. However, it's something that we could. It's quite difficult to predict how much there would be on the road. There's only residences on one side of the road, but I think perhaps it would be actually appropriate to condition sort of a monitoring of any parking. So if it is problematic, we could then take measures to control it.
So Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. I had a very, very long, almost as long as Councillor Anderson's list of questions to officers. But I was just looking around the room as Councillor Lamb made his motion, and I think I get a sense that actually many of my questions may be answered with further information provided if we were to defer, and also I'd have more questions. So I think I'd rather leave them until the appropriate time when it comes back. So in that spirit, I'll formally move to second Councillor Lamb's motion. Perhaps if we could have a vote on that now, and then we could perhaps pick up the questions next time round if that's vote successful.
Right. If this is the case, anyone who's in favour of Councillor Lamb's proposal, Councillor Stevenson's, who's just seconded it.
So just to jump in, because Councillor Lamb, you have suggested a new motion which differs from that in the officer report. If you want to sort of just lay that out again for us, and then Councillor Stevenson, if you're prepared to second that, we'll vote first of all on whether everyone is happy for this new motion to come to the table, and then vote on the motion itself. Thank you.
Thank you. So my motion is that we defer this item for a cycle to enable proper consultation to take place with the local community and ward members, and to get more information back around the parking issues, around the impact of the floodlights and the wider lighting, the impact of the AstroTurf and what its lifespan is, what the impact of that is on the climate, plans to mitigate the rubber crumb going all over, just get confirmation about accessibility and community use. So that's my motion, Chair.
Sorry, just one very brief comment. In terms of the timescale for the deferral, I think it's extremely unlikely that we would be able to bring that back within one cycle. So I'd just ask that that be left open, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if any of the officers were able to tell us if we defer that 1-2 cycle situation, whether that would impact on us getting the funding. Like, would it close the project off, basically?
I'm afraid from my perspective, I don't know the answer to that question, although I do know that there is pressure on to resolve the application as quickly as possible. But I don't know whether the applicants have any further information on that.
I've got Councillor Ray and then Councillor Stevenson.
I think maybe just to help us get to that stage, I think we're all probably agreeing in principle that this is going to happen in one form or another. So I don't think there's necessarily a question over the proposal going ahead. I think we're just asking for certain specifics to be clarified. Is that what I'm reading from the room? Because I think if the concern is that from the applicant's point of view, and in this case, the funder's point of view, I've got the name of the organisation now, then actually, Parklife, there we go, thank you. Actually, if we're giving an indication that actually it's approval in principle subject to specific qualifications in terms of questions that we haven't had answered, or are we not at that stage? I'd obviously be your proposal. So it's
well, it's a very good question, because it changes your view if there's a chance that the funding disappears. So are we able to get the answer to that question now?
Yeah, if I can ask the agent to come on the table, you might be able to clarify this particular. No, okay. Councillor Stevenson.
Just to add, this was first submitted 2.5 years ago, and you've brought it to us today. So if you're now saying we have to make a decision today or the funding goes, the problem with respect is yours, not ours. I think if you're now saying to us within one cycle you cannot provide the information we've asked for, then you were premature bringing it to us today anyway. So I think on the basis of what's been said, and Councillor Lamb's motion, I will formally second. I think we should move in the way that the legal advisors suggested.
If I may just add one more thing, and I was going to ask this earlier on, and it's all right to say it is taken 2 years, but what we got to understand, we have been through a pandemic, which obviously has been difficult for many of us. I mean, I can understand the frustration from some members, but I also understand that some of the deprived areas surrounding this particular location, some of the young people don't get the same opportunity, not only in education, but also in sports facilities as well. So, I mean, when we talk about these sort of localities, we're not just talking about this particular area, we're also talking about places like Halton Moor, which is not far away from this location, Seacroft, Gipton and Hare Hills. I mean, 2 months ago, we approved a small well-being center in Fernwell. So it shows, I mean, one of the questions I asked this morning was, do we know how many football pitches are surrounding this particular area? And I think the answer was we were not clear, but also what I know from my day job, some of the primary schools in Crossgate, they are in the heart of the some of the council estates, not with the, I don't think so. They've got their own football pitches surrounding them. So I'm just thinking loud here. I mean, I don't want to miss an opportunity for those young people, male and female. Unfortunately, I don't have these sort of facilities in my neck of the wood. And if I would have had, I would have spoken out, and I would definitely have supported any sort of sports facility for our local people, not only for the young, but also for working people who can take more facilities. But again, this is not a planning issue, but it's something that I feel that we need to be, absolutely serious. We've heard from the objectors, and I have every single sympathy with every single person who has came to this room, but also I have some sort of sympathy for our young people. These people are the future of our city and of our nation as well. So bear that in mind. And if you're willing to move your motion legally, I'm obliged to take the vote and move on with it.
No, that's fine. So we've got Councillor Stevenson is now seconding that motion. So if we can just vote that you're all happy for this motion to come to the table or not, and then vote on the actual motion itself.
Right, taking Councillor Stevenson's motion, Councillor Lamb's motion, seconded by Councillor Stevenson. For? Against? Any abstention? No, so it's carried.
So we've got that motion. We've got that motion before us now, almost replacing what you see on the front of the officer report. You've agreed to that. And if we now actually vote on that going ahead and taking place.
So looking at the officer recommendation, all in favour? Sorry. All in favour? Against? Abstention. Okay, so it's carried. If you want to just finalize the agenda, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just then to confirm that members have deferred consideration of the application. This is to allow further consultation to be undertaken by the applicants, public consultation to be undertaken by the applicants, for further information in respect of parking issues, further information to be presented in respect to the wider impact of the floodlighting, further information in terms of the nature of the playing surface, its lifespan, sustainability of it, and the implications of the rubber crumb, as it were, and the further information in terms of community use and accessibility of the facility.
Sorry, Chair, just one clarification. David just referred to the impact of the floodlighting. The motion was about the floodlighting and the lighting of the site as a whole.
Okay. I think what we were looking for was some sort of CGI, weren't we, around? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Item 9, date and the time of the next meeting will be Thursday, the 22nd of September, 2022. That concludes business of today's meeting. Thank you all for attendance and contributions. I now declare this meeting to be closed. Thank you.